Don't be like me and don't see your rejections as a measure of your self-worth, because you're really selling yourself short if you look at it that way. Hi, my name is Leon. I am a junior at Brown University, and today I'm going to be talking about how I was accepted into the Ivy League. And while I do admit that it's been a while since I applied to college, 3 years to be exact, college admissions has been a hot topic as of late, with applicant rates skyrocketing. So I do think it would be helpful for me to give some insight on this process and my own experience. And even though I liked how everything turned out, there are still some things that I regret doing. And I'll talk more about this later in the video, so keep watching till the end. So I'm going to break this down into where I was accepted to, my statistics or stats, my extracurriculars, my awards, my essays, and then I'll finish off with my regrets and my key most important takeaways on this whole process. So I'm going to keep this pretty general, not go into too much specifics, but if there's more demand for that, then maybe I'll make more videos. So let's start with where I was accepted to. So I applied to 16 schools, and I was accepted to around half of them. And out of those 8 schools, 3 of them were considered top tier schools, and they were UC Berkeley, Brown, PLME, which is a program I'm in now, and Cornell. So I actually only applied to 3 out of all the Ivies, and I got into Brown and Cornell, so I am 2 for 3. And then the remaining schools were state schools in New York. So like Stony Brook, Binghamton, Hofstra, which is actually private, but those types of schools. Anyways, I think the reason that I didn't apply to so many top tier schools was because I didn't think I would get in. And so I thought it was more safe to go with more state schools, so I would have more options. My philosophy at the time was that I would only apply to a school if I could see myself being there. That sounds a little bit vague, but for example, I didn't apply to Harvard because I couldn't see myself thriving in that type of environment. So now let's move on to stats. I always thought it was kind of pointless after I was accepted that year when people started asking me, oh, what was your SAT, what was your GPA? And this is because I feel like people should know now that a perfect SAT score or a perfect GPA does not guarantee acceptance into any top tier school. It comes down to these metrics being imperfect in the way they measure ability. So for SATs, many schools are now SAT optional because people have realized that this sort of standardized testing creates inequality between students who can afford advanced test preparation versus students who cannot. And your score on a single exam tells people very little about your intelligence or where you'll end up in the future. So if you consider this aspect, then your GPA is going to matter more because it's a measure of your so-called achievement for all 4 years of high school. But then you also have to consider that GPA is calculated very differently between high schools. So for example, my high school calculated your GPA out of a 100 scale that was also weighted. But many of my classmates at Brown went to high schools with a letter system. So if you got above a 90%, then you had an A lower threshold is a B, very similar to how Brown does grades. So if a high school student from my high school were to ask another student at another high school what their stats were, given that they were admitted to an Ivy League, then you would be kind of comparing apples to oranges, because one person would have a letter grade and you're comparing that to a numerical grade that's also weighted. I feel like in the present day with this holistic application process, as long as you are above the threshold with the statistics, then you should be good. And of course, if you're a special case, such as an athlete, a legacy, or something else, then maybe that threshold will be slightly lower for you. But generally, I would try to just be above the average score. So SAT, GPA, however that's calculated for the school that you want to get into. And of course that seems like obvious advice, but that was kind of what I did. And I try not to worry too much about my scores and try to focus more on other aspects of the application that I thought were more important. I guess another stat is AP classes or IB classes. So I was in the AP system and I took around 12 APs, which is kind of a lot, but I kind of just did it, grinded through. My school offered a lot more, and I think it's really dependent on what your school offers and if you take advantage of that. So yeah, that's what I tried to do. Now we're going to start with extracurriculars. I have to pull this up since I kind of forgot what I did in high school. So I did volunteering and shadowing at the local hospital. I was a sports editor for my school's newspaper club. I did research with a professor and I submitted to several competitions. Didn't really win anything, but I'll talk more about that later. And I was also on the science bowl team. And my main activity during high school was running 4 years of track. So spring track, winter track, and cross country. I didn't do anything too special. Like I didn't start my own nonprofit or my own company or anything. But I think what kind of did set me apart was the amount of time and effort I put into running cross country and track. And I knew in high school that I didn't want to compete in college, but I just really loved doing that at the time. If I were to look back, I would never trade those years of running for anything, because being with the team during that time was such an instrumental part of my high school experience and really made me the person that I am today. And of course I wrote about that in my college application essays. So I think my main takeaway from this is that you should do the things that you really enjoy in high school, because it just doesn't make sense not to. And of course I'm lucky that it worked out, but this is just my experience and take what you want from it. So now it's time for the awards. So I have typed out on this Word doc all the awards that I remember getting. So I was a national merit finalist, which meant I scored above a minimum on the PSAT. I was a national AP scholar, which meant I scored above 4 on a minimum number of AP exams. I had a bunch of regional awards for track and cross country that were kind of minor. I was a Presidential Volunteer Award recipient for gold, which meant I volunteered over 240 hours in a year at the hospital. And then I was an Explore Vision competition semi-finalist. I kind of forget what it was. It was kind of like a research competition. Not very impressive compared to other people that I know, but I think it was sufficient in the end. And so now we're moving on to the last part of the application. It is personal statements and essays. I want to stress that this is probably the most instrumental part of my application and is arguably the reason why I was admitted not only into Brown, but also into the PLME program there. So basically I started writing my supplements over the summer before senior year, and then I slowly edited it every single day. I looked at it, made a few tweaks here and there, and then I submitted in December for RDs. I mostly wrote about my high school experiences, writing in the newspaper, running on the track team, and of course about shadowing and volunteering in the hospital, which was like a big part of the reason why I wanted to become a doctor. I haven't really looked at my admissions essays for a while, but I knew at the time that they were really, really good, and I couldn't be more proud of what I had written over these 6 months. Maybe I'll share a few. If you want me to share some of them, drop a comment down below and maybe I'll make a video about it. And I want to emphasize again that, with holistic admissions now, your scores are not going to matter as much. What matters more is the type of person that you are, and if you can really convey what makes you you and how you would contribute to the school that you're applying to. And this makes sense because to the admissions officers, you're not really a person until they read your essays. You're just a set of numbers, a set of scores and accomplishments. And so if you were to worry about something in your applications process, don't worry about the few points on your SAT or GPA. Worry more about your essay and really coming up with a story that defines the person that you are. So that was a quick and dirty overview of what I remember about my application 3 years ago. And now we're on to the final portion that you've been waiting for, which is the regrets that I have, given that I'm a junior now. It's been a bit since I applied to college. I think my main regret is that I wish I didn't stress as much at the time and really place all this importance on getting into a good school. At the time I would stress about it every day and I would check College Confidential, I would read profiles, I would look at stats, and it all seems kind of pointless looking back on it now because I wasted so much energy into just stressing about it and it wasn't helping at all at the time. I had this false notion in my head that, my career would be somehow over if I only got into a state school, which is definitely not the case. And early on in the application process, I was rejected from many different programs and I started to really fear that possibility. Overall, I think that time in high school was just really stressful and it wasn't very enjoyable and I wasn't very happy during my senior year. But then again, I also want to say that I don't regret putting all the work into getting to where I am now. There's that saying where if you like where you are now, you shouldn't have any regrets. So I don't regret all the hours I put in to study, do extracurriculars. I think all those things kind of added up and helped me to get where I am now. You know, the truth is college admissions is just a system. It's like a game that everyone has to play. And if you're someone like me who has played the game and has apparently won the game, then you can look back and say, oh, this is kind of dumb, you know, what I did here, and maybe I shouldn't have done that. But, you know, at the moment, you didn't really know how things would end up. So that was all you could do at the time, and I totally emphasize if you're applying to colleges now, that must be how you feel. And you know, that brings me on to my next point, and I really want to drive this home, and it's the fact that the college admissions process, like many things in life, has an element of luck inside. You know, if you just look at the bare bones logistics, every single year college admissions officers have to comb through thousands upon thousands of college applications and narrow down all these applicants into a 10 or less % acceptance rate. You know, really imagine the scene and how things can play out. So let's look at a place like Brown, right, with a around 7% acceptance rate. So it's a gloomy January. All of the regular decision applicants have submitted their applications, and the admissions officers are sitting in their gloomy office. It's raining outside or possibly snowing. It's a cloudy day. They're sipping their coffee, going through all these papers, and maybe your essay is about how you love the TV show Friends. So stay with me right here. And it just so happens that the admissions officer who's reading your essay really hates that show. So because of that, they're not going to look favorably on your application. There's many different idiosyncrasies that can just match up. And so there's an element of luck. It depends on who you're matched to in terms of the admissions officer. It depends on how they're feeling that day. You know, what if one admissions officer had just come back from a great run around the city of Providence, okay, and they read my college essay, which was about how I loved running. Obviously, they're going to look favorably upon my essay compared to an essay about another topic because of their inherent bias. And theoretically speaking, these are all potential scenarios that could occur. And maybe it would come down to something like this instead of whether you are a good applicant for Brown University. You know, the thing with holistic applications is that there is very little objectivity. On top of this, there are many other factors outside of your control that contribute to acceptance. And this involves legacy children, or the children of celebrities, or the children of parents who have a lot of money who donate to the university. And the thing about the system of higher education is that it tends to favor the economically and socially elite. So if you look at a place like Brown University, the median family income of a Brown student is way higher than the median family income of a typical person in the United States. If you're from a lower social or economic background, then it's possible that your likelihood for admissions into an Ivy League will be lower than someone else of equal ability. You know, when I was applying to college, I really failed to realize just how inherently unfair and luck-based the system is. So don't repeat my mistake. If you're planning to play the college admissions game, go into it knowing that it is unfair. You might be at a disadvantage, and that the outcome does not determine the person that you are. Don't be like me, and don't see your rejections as a measure of your self-worth, because you're really selling yourself short if you look at it that way. And so with that, I want to end on this note. Whenever people ask me after I got into Brown University how I got in, I always don't know how to respond, because I can tell you exactly what I did and I just happened to get in after doing that, but I don't know the formula for getting into Brown. I only know maybe there's a correlation between something that I did and the end result, but I'm not sure if there is a direct causation. I think I'm just very grateful and I'm thankful to be able to attend such a good school. Despite the fact that many people might think that I got here through my own effort somehow, I know that the difference between acceptance and rejection could have been just a minuscule detail. And so the title of this video is how I got into the Ivy League. And my final answer to that question is, I actually don't know. I don't know for sure. But this is what I did, and this is my advice that I have. And hopefully you could come away from this video with some insights and just not stress too much about things that are outside of your control. So if you watched this far, first of all, thank you. And if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up below. Comment if you have any questions regarding anything I mentioned in the video or the applications process, and subscribe to my channel for more content. Well, thanks for watching again, and I'll see you soon. Peace.